And we are back where we were, I guess. Back at last season. City have just lost to Spurs 2-0. I'm not live because my internet isn't working, sort of mercifully, to be honest. I'm just uploading this via my phone. But that was a painful watch. We have just lost and sort of dampened all the enthusiasm we had from the 4-0 Wolves game with a performance incredibly reminiscent of last season, unfortunately, in more ways than one. Disheartening is the word I would probably use. Now, naturally, the reality of the situation is probably somewhere in between the Spurs game and the Wolves game, as is the way with these things. But that was a very hard pill to swallow. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. We went into that game with a lineup that most of us were incredibly excited by. Lots of new players. The shock of the new, the excitement of seeing 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙧𝙖𝙬, Reinders, 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙧𝙬𝙬 and co all lining up on the pitch together. It was thrilling, and it felt like it was going to be a really exciting day at the Etihad. But it's come crashing down with a horrible Thomas Frank and Spurs shaped bump. Spurs, of course, continuing to be a curse against City, and also Thomas Frank and man has given us loads of trouble. Brentford, and that was it was a painful watch. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. It was a very painful watch. I don't know how far to dive into the state of that game. Is it the fact that it's not cohesive because it's early days? Can we make strong decisions based on that? Probably not. It probably wouldn't be fair. But at the same time, it's very hard not to feel how we felt last season because the reminders are all there. And the difficult thing for me was, and it could once again just be that big caveat. Everything in this video has got a massive asterisk hanging over it because how early on it is in the season, and certain players are out, and Guardiola saying this is our pre-season. But there was a lot of things that remind us last season, so it's hard not to ignore that and feel that pain. And the thing that I struggled with is that it felt like we didn't really have a chance, to be honest, in the second half. It felt like even the players that came on, there was no real belief that we could actually turn this round, and Spurs were irritatingly comfortable towards the end of that game as they held it out. We didn't really have anything. Now, I'll sort of try and talk about how the game unfolded, then come back to that picture that it's created afterwards. So, of course, the team started with James Trafford starting in goal again, Rico Lewis, 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙧𝙖𝙬, Diaz and Stones. The defence from the last game, which made an awful lot of sense, really. Guardiola went more bold. Out was the experienced Bernardo Silva. In was the maverick joy of 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙧𝙬𝙬 alongside Reinders and Nico Gonzalez. The only other change was Marmoush came in for Jeremy Doku. He didn't have the best game last week against Wolves. Oscar Bob on the right, Erling Haaland through the middle. We did create some chances early on, to be honest. We weren't perfect, but if Marmoush puts that chance in the back of the net that Haaland fed to him, you've got a very different game. If Reinders, when Haaland frees him, somehow, turns towards goal, runs and starts and shoots, maybe scores instead of trying to put the ball dinked over to the corner to 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙧𝙬, or actually Reinders releases the ball at one point out wide to Marmoush instead of tries to shoot through a crowd, we might be into a different kettle of fish entirely, but that doesn't happen, and unfortunately City played themselves. The first goal, the high line gets cut out, Stone slips, not comfortable in the build-up prior to that. The team's chasing their heels and Spurs are just too fast, too quick for us, and it's a really poor goal to concede. And the second one, sadly, is an absolute disaster for James Trafford. We'll have to talk about him in a minute. I sort of hate... I don't know how you guys felt, but when things happen to young players, and I don't know, I sort of cringe immediately. Some of you guys will immediately come out with the argument of these are young players and we haven't got time to wait for them. This is true, but I've seen very talented footballers, young ones, crushed by a moment, and that's then followed them around for the rest of their career as if it's representative of who they are. But Trafford, unfortunately, he's had a game today that it's going to be used against him. There's no two ways about it. It's up to now to James Trafford to actually turn that around if he wants to, but the mistake was a shocker, unfortunately. He made the wrong call. And then there was a few other decision making which didn't really work for him today. Nice save at the end, a double save, but James had a poor game today. It was his mistake, unfortunately. It led to that second goal. A straight pass, but it wasn't to the man. It was sort of askew, and Spurs aggressive with the press all day, have leapt on it, and it's led to a goal, and it was scrappy. And after that, City didn't really do anything. I understand the logic of why you bought Ryan 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙧𝙬 off. I mean, we'll sit there and go, Bernardo was even worse when he came on. He absolutely was. I'm not going to pretend anything other than that. But there was a lack of what felt like control. It felt logical to go back to what we saw against Wolves with the experienced Bernardo and bringing Doku on from Marmoush. I understood the decisions, but it didn't happen. And it felt maybe we never really recovered from 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 going off. I mean, if you want to know City's bloody luck, man, I don't think 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬's had an injury in 3 years. I'm not even kidding. I looked on transfer market on my phone, his injury history, nothing in 3 years, and he gets an injury in his second game, man. His second game, and I don't know how long he's going to be out for. It could just be a tiny thing, but that's the City curse for you. And Ake, to be honest, Ake was fine. He never really looked fully sharp in the way that Stones looked sharp and when he came back into the team after injuries. And Ake was fine, but we lost a lot of fluidity. And unfortunately, I go around the pitch and too many, like Reinders, couldn't really get any decision right today. After the glory of last week, everything he did today sort of, instead of turning to gold, it all turned to smush. He wasn't there. And Oscar Bob had a decent first half. The team wasn't quite on his wavelength today, though, I would argue. Rico had a poor game, unfortunately. Rico gave the ball away an awful lot, and physically the question marks will remain. I maintain Rico's a good footballer, but I can't sit here and pretend that it was a good performance today. It just wasn't. Bernardo Silva, when he came on, he had a stinker. I thought he was great last week. He had a stinker today. Everything he did today when he came on, Bernardo, was just poor, unfortunately. Haaland had a good moment. Of course, he created a beautiful chance for Marmoush with a great driving run and through ball. He also put one over from the header, which he couldn't quite keep down. Maybe it was just too much for him. And, I'm looking at the Stone slip. I'm just seeing the goal again here. The Stone slip is a killer. Nunes doesn't. Well, maybe Nunes does have the pace to get back there. Rico doesn't have. I was about to say Rico doesn't have the pace. Maybe Nunes does. It's just hard to take, man. It's really hard because it's just one of those performances where, we've seen it all before. How much of this is just we're not ready yet? How much is it we need Rodri to find his form? Rodri couldn't really do much when he came on. I don't know, but this is a very difficult performance to take today. Maybe they're just overthinking everything. Maybe they are. Maybe it's a case they've overthought everything. The rhythm is not quite there yet, and maybe it'll get better with time. I do think the final version of whatever this Manchester City side isn't probably this. He probably will change. Donnarumma still will likely come in. I think we have to be slightly realistic about Donnarumma's ball playing abilities. He's got quite a few clangers at PSG. Having said that, his experience, I'm sure he makes better decision making than that, if not necessarily better passer or whatever. But I mean, maybe I don't know. We'll see. But either way, Donnarumma is a keeper who will change the side. Is what I'm making. The point I'm making, really, it's going to be a different side. Maybe Rodrigo will still come in for Savino. I don't know. I don't think they were the fundamental issues in this game. I think largely the midfield control just wasn't there. And, if Marmoush scores at any of the two chances he had, Haaland has a tap-in. Haaland should have created a tap-in for what it's worth, and he can't make a simple square cross. I don't know. Like, maybe we would have been looking at a different score. But it didn't happen. Too many poor decision-making today. Didn't convert our chances. Lost the midfield battle. And, it wasn't great. Annoyingly, because it's not like we were actually to run ragged. Like, the defence wasn't run ragged away from those moments. That's what's irritating about it. It was just self-inflicted as always. Look, what do we learn from this? Maybe it's too early for some of these players. Maybe it's too early for this team, full stop. Maybe this team needs a little bit more work in progress. We're going to have to wait until, obviously, Rodri, people like Vardiol and Foden, they can find an impact on the side too. I don't know. But the best version of this side is probably a while away, unfortunately. Look, maybe I got too giddy after the Wolves game, but who didn't? Looks like Pep did as well. He was saying he enjoyed the vibes of that. And maybe this is sort of the level that we need. Or it could just be one of those bloody days. It could just be the Spurs curse again. It could just be the fact that, it's Thomas Frank and it happens to us, and it could be early season nonsense. It could also just be that we're not quite good enough yet. I don't know, but this isn't out of character for an early season City performance to be frustrating. I don't know. I haven't got my head around it fully yet. Let me know, of course, how you feel about it. It's going to take a little time for this City team to gel, but that was. I don't know, maybe there's too many changes at once and not the consistency. This is probably why managers prefer rebuilds that are gradual as opposed to several new changes. I do sort of still wish, though, we're going to play the highlight that Kusanov was playing. I can't sit and pretend otherwise. Maybe that first goal, that goal doesn't happen if Kusanov's playing. I love you, Ruben, but he's still not good at the highline, is he? Right now he isn't. I don't know. Previously he was pretty good at it. Maybe because we had Kyle Walker defending, but right now Ruben is struggling with the highline, and we are seeing the importance of Edison with his ball playing. I don't know, it's complicated, and the thing I'm worried about is over the top reactions from myself, from everyone as a result of this. Maybe we're all going to be knee jerk, but maybe Guardiola won't at the heart of it. I don't know. He gave us the team he wanted today, by the way, largely, and he just wasn't quite good enough yet, or full stop. That's the question we're going to have to answer. I need to sleep on this. Welcome to City. We're back as soon as we weren't back. The other way around. Well, we're not back as soon as you were back. Whatever, I'm tired, man. Thanks for watching. Give the video a like if you want to. Subscribe if you want to. I'll see.